Welcome back to Classic Game Room, the podcast. Classic Game Room, but without the games. It's like a non-alcoholic beer. All the beer flavor, but without any of the fun. Well, that's not entirely true. You can still throw the bottle at people. Oh, I should tell this story. It's a great story. I mean, it's kind of funny, but also sad. Like, I was driving somewhere yesterday. It was like one of these 90-degree days, and there's like this drunk guy just sitting on the corner. Like, it's like had that look like he'd been just drinking all day and was just sitting on the corner. And he kind of looked up at me, and I was just parked at this red light. And he had one of those big, like 20-ounce cans, 22-ounce cans of Old English 800, and he just sort of lobbed it at my car. Like it was an empty can. And he missed by a mile. Like it only went like 8 or 9 feet. I was just kind of shocked for a moment, but then I sort of nodded to him out of respect. Like, that's a great choice of projectile. An OE 800 can. That's legit. I mean, if you're going to throw something at somebody, it should be a can of 8-ball. Which is, of course, where Dr. 8-ball came from, if anybody remembers that. What was that? Was that Sims? That was a great one. That was like my favorite one, I think. One of my favorite reviews. So, what am I talking about this week? I wasn't sure if I was going to do a podcast again. I've taken the entire... nobody knows this stuff. Like, it's super boring, and people only really want to hear drama, and, like, I'm like the least dramatic person you'll ever meet. So, like, behind the scenes, I've just taken the entire business and swung it back to print. So it's like a giant cannon, except instead of looking at doing some, like, crazier marketing stuff with video, I've just taken the cannon and aimed it back at, like, print. And we're just going to pay for advertising. Super not interesting, right? And I can't mix, like, straightforward, no-nonsense business with, like, entertainment stuff, especially when the entertainment stuff all loses money. So then I just hate it. And anyway, the whole marketing plan at this point is to not use social media at all, and sales have gone up because we're able to put time into other things. So social media is literally the worst thing that humans have ever created, and this is basically why I blow the world up in every single book I ever make. Social media is great if you're looking to overthrow a democracy, take down civilization, or hurt people. Pretty much sucks for everything else, except maybe cooking videos. It's weird that, like, this one thing that's good for like destroying humanity is also good for making pasta. Like, it's weird. Anyway, I wasn't sure if I was going to do another one. My marketing team's yelling at me, and I hear from people occasionally, the ones who aren't complaining about game reviews. I hear from people occasionally who really enjoy the podcast because I agree it's kind of unique. I mean, my take on things is pretty obsolete these days, and that's what makes it unique. And I've been wrapping up the book, The History of Classic Game Room. I mean, it's in final proofreading right now. It's a pretty big book, where I go into great detail on my experience, 25 years making a classic game room in one form or another. But also just my experience on the internet since 1995. I started online in 1995 when I self-taught myself web programming, and then in 1996 or 97, I can't remember exactly, but one of those years, I think it was 96, I started to post my own website as a way to market my comics in college. So I just pulled a whole bunch of all-nighters in school, taught myself web programming, and then started using that to market my work. And I remember using Lycos and Alta Vista and Netscape way back in the day. I remember seeing some weird-ass website that was selling books. It was called Amazon. And then at some point they had, like, lawnmowers. I'm like, that's dumb. Who's going to buy lawnmowers on some website that sells books? Well, it's, I guess I was too busy watching Star Wars and drinking beer to really pay attention to the big picture back then. So Classic Game Room started in 1999, but the book goes back into the mid-90s. Actually, the book goes back into the 80s. But the best part about the internet early on is that nobody knew what to do with it. And I feel the same way about stuff like YouTube. Like, that's what made YouTube so cool back in 2008 and 2009, is that it had all this potential, and, like, it was fun to figure out how to use it. But the ad-supported model which is ironically the thing that we were trying to create back in like 1999. The ad-supported internet is what has destroyed the internet, because it's all about being the loudest and getting the most attention to get the ads. And like back in the early days when we were doing stuff in the 90s, 2000, we tried to make something good because it was the best shows on our little TV network on the internet. It was the best shows. The shows that had some content or some value or some entertainment qualities. It was the best shows that performed the best. Can the same be said today? Now bear with me here. Not just some old guy rambling and complaining. There's a train of thought here that I've been going back through when writing the history of Classic Game Room. As a Gen Xer, I mean, everything is really aimed at directly at Gen X at this point. Anything that I'm producing, as a Gen Xer, I think what really screwed us all up was Star Wars. Like old school 1977 Star Wars. Now, I'll explain why in a moment, but in my years publishing, and I've been doing publishing work for quite some time now, my experience is that the best-selling products tend to be the most mediocre products. And it's very difficult to engineer a mediocre product, because it's like rolling the dice. If you put too much creativity into something, it's weird, and nobody gets it unless somebody famous talks about it. Basically, you're rolling the dice, and if it outright sucks, then nobody wants anything to do with it. So, like, what you need to do is somehow create things that are just like right in the middle, that don't cost too much to make, so you can afford rolling the dice, in hopes that maybe somebody will, catch on or talk about it or buy it and give some good reviews. And it's sort of like a snowball at that point. So basically, you're just throwing darts at the wall constantly. That's the publishing business. Here's a handful of darts. Here's a couple beers. Shut your eyes and just start lobbing things at the wall. So every now and then someone approaches me with a book. They're like, I want you to publish this book. And I look at it and I'm like, you don't want me to publish this book. If this book is really good, what you want is a company like Penguin or Random House to publish this book. Because what they're going to do is they're going to get this book in front of some famous people who are going to talk about it, and then you're going to sell the book. If you give me the book, I'm just going to throw it at the wall like the rest of these darts. I'm going to have to hire someone to see if you stole this book from somewhere else on the internet, or if you used AI to generate this book, and at that point, it's not cost effective. This is literally life in the publishing business. Unless your publishing company started in the 19th century, then maybe you got ahead of the game. So this affects what products I choose to publish and what products I choose to create and what I choose to spend my time on. And I'll explain where this. You'll see where this whole thing is going here in a moment. But let me take it back to Star Wars, because Star Wars is an anomaly that screwed up everything for everybody for like a whole generation. Because Star Wars was really good. And it was like the most popular thing for a decade. And I'm not talking about popular like Fallout popular or Taylor Swift popular. I'm talking about popular like this thing literally affected the course of civilization popular. Like Star Wars was that kind of popular, and people who weren't around in the late 70s, early 80s might not understand that it affected everything. It affected just existence. Certainly media. I mean, Star Wars changed the direction of media for like the next 15 years. Science fiction was not popular at all, and then all of a sudden, you got Star Trek comes back, Battlestar Galactica, Buck Rogers in the 25th century. Star Wars, because of Star Wars, we got all of the 80s cartoons, because Star Wars sold a whole lot of action figures, and you got companies like Hasbro and whatnot that want to go and sell action figures. Well, they turn to cartoons to sell action figures, which are conveniently the same damn size as the Star Wars figures. Because if you're going to have rock and roll make out with Princess Leia in the back of a TIE fighter, they got to be relatively the same size. Not that I did this. I'm just saying. rock and roll is like the coolest Joe. I know everybody always gives Snake Eyes credit, but like, rock and roll's my man. If you take it back to 1977, certainly 1980, Star Wars was really good, and it had no right to be that popular. Like, if you released it today, brand new, it would just totally flop. But at the time, it was revolutionary. And for whatever reason, it just caught the public's attention and just became this global phenomenon on the scale that I don't think anything... The only thing that I think has even come close is TikTok. Maybe also MTV. TikTok and MTV both changed how an entire generation consumes media. And whether you like them or not, TikTok certainly... Well, it's of questionable value in my opinion. But I grew up on MTV, so I love MTV. And MTV actually plays a huge part in this upcoming book I'm working on, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But these are things that changed society and affected generations. They changed how, TikTok has changed how a generation consumes media, and these little bits that you just swipe through, and, YouTube and Facebook and all this. They just copied TikTok's model. And if you look at MTV, MTV changed how my generation heard about music. MTV told us what to listen to and made music look cool. And that's not relevant at all anymore, but at the time it just changed like the next decade of music consumption and affected our consumer behaviors. No longer was a song on the radio just a song on the radio. The song also had to look good. So suddenly all of your musicians had to be attractive, or at least super obnoxious, one or the other. Preferably both. Anyway, my point here is that Star Wars was good. And because it was good, we bought the toys. And we watched the movies over and over and over again. And we bought the lunch boxes, and we bought the Star Wars disco albums. It affected music. Star Wars disco, almost as good as Pac-Man disco. And for those of you who don't know this, younger listeners out there, look up Mako, M-E-C-O. M-E-C-O, yeah, spelling that right. Mako is an artist, made a whole bunch of like disco albums inspired by science fiction movies like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and stuff. That they're really good. But Star Wars bucked the trend that mediocrity sells. Star Wars made it seem as though something cool is what sells, and something good is what sells. And that's generally not the case. And I think that just screwed us up. I know that like in the early days of my internet TV career, when we had this TV channel, it was the best couple shows that got the most views. And we put the most effort into the best shows to get the most views. We were trying to make this ad-created internet stuff work in the 90s. And even in the early days of Classic Game Room, when I was producing the show, I tried really hard to make it good because people enjoyed that it was good. But going back through my career writing this book, the history of Classic Game Room, the biggest single mistake was being influenced by Star Wars and this misconception that making it good is what would have made things sell. If we had just made stuff loud and obnoxious and angry, then that would have started controversy and drama, and that would have led to more views and clicks and ad revenue. Would it have been worth it? No. No, I'm glad we never took that road. Even though mediocre products tend to sell better with less effort, they're generally unfulfilling. And as an artist, that just drives me crazy and I can't stand it. I hate it. And this leads me to Omega Ronin, which you're hearing in the background, but I'm about to release it as a graphic novel. And maybe this is what you want to hear, maybe it's not what you want to hear, I don't care. It's my podcast, I'm going to talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. Planting the seed of rock and roll and Princess Leia making out in the back of a TIE fighter. You're welcome. By the way, that also works with Lando and CoverGirl Shipwreck and C-3PO. Use your imagination. Making mediocrity sucks, and honestly, it's really no better than trying to do something really good and putting a lot of effort into marketing. I've had some success with mediocre products, but it's roll that dice, and it gets harder and harder every year because more and more people get into self-publishing, and now you've got AI to contend with, which is going to change the whole landscape. But I'm pouring every bit of my creative efforts into Omega Ronin, not just the music, but the graphic novel, which will come with a companion vinyl soundtrack. And I've been working on this for a while. And the marketing team's yelling at me, "Get on the podcast and talk about it." I'm like, I hate talking about things when I'm working on them because it's like it shatters my concentration talking about it instead of making it. It'll be up on the website, the Omega Ronin website, really soon. It's going to Kickstarter because the vinyl costs are outrageous, so that's what Kickstarter's good for, is covering the cost of production. It's the most ridiculous science fiction adventure that you've ever heard of, and I'm taking it back to old school Star Wars style in the sense that I want it to be creative and imaginative and original and just outrageous and fun, which is how Star Wars moved me back in the day. Like, I can't think of anything that I really enjoy more than The Empire Strikes Back. Except maybe watching RoboCop and Predator back to back, but, it's like the same experience. I'm putting together a trailer for Omega Ronin right now. And I'm going to play you a rough draft outtake that I'm not going to use in the final trailer because I just felt like it was too long. Like, it's fine for a podcast, it's already long, but I'm going to play you the trailer here, or the rough draft of the trailer. Just because I made it and for amusement's sake. Here it is. Here's the rough draft of the Omega Ronin trailer. Enjoy.
1,000,000 years in the future, robots who were once created to serve have instead exterminated mankind and spread to the stars. The last remaining human beings, known as sirens, are kept in stasis. They are awakened on occasion to sing for the robots' amusement. This prized human song, as it is known, is the robots' greatest drug and perhaps their only weakness. Take this weird voice setting off me.
There we go. Extra sultry. All right. In the 1980s, NASA scientists discovered a cry for help from the greatest alien civilization in the universe. They dubbed this project Omega Ronin. All right, that's all the further I got. It started to sound like Edit Station 1, and that's not really what my intent was. But basically, the tagline of the trailer, the newer trailer, is to fight robots in the future, one must master the 1980s art of being awesome. Because the entire thing comes back to how music videos in the 1980s are weaponized to fight futuristic robots in the year 1,001,982. So I've been working on a framework to draw this because I really want to tell the story, but I got to make it efficient. So it's like I'm working in a combination of like computer animation and hand drawing, so it looks really nice. It's going to be a hardcover book and soundtrack that should be played while you're reading the book. So it's like this is so Gen X. It's like you can almost imagine yourself, what are you now, like 45, 50, sitting on the floor on the shag carpet next to a lunchbox, reading Omega Ronin while it plays on the turntable in front of you. So it's like the whole experience. I've been working on a lot of soundtrack like songs lately, so the album will flow with the book. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like Gem and the Holograms meets Appleseed and Robotech. So you got like a 1980s hair metal band basically fighting for the future of civilization, which I think was also the plot of Galaxy Rangers. So really no surprise where the inspirations are coming from here. everything that I like is going into it. So 1970s mainframe computers, terminals, El Camino, space shuttle with guns on it, murderous robots, lasers, disco, laserdisc. It's all there. It's basically the Gen X cry for help that the future sucks ass compared to what we were promised in Blade Runner. Like, I would take replicants over influencers any day. And I've been writing this for a while. It's gone through, like, I hate to use the term rewrite, but it's taken a while to just. In 2019, I created the concept. Like, the Omega Ronin thing was like it's like the most powerful civilization in the entire universe. That's it's like 3 billion years old, and it's just like conquered, countless billions of galaxies. Except there's something even more powerful than it that destroys it. But before it's blown up or murdered or whatever, it kind of shoots off a whole bunch of backup files all over the place, and that's what NASA discovers in the 1980s. And then they lock that into a vault on the moon. And this allows me to use the 1980s aesthetic in the future, which is basically just Buck Rogers. No, the main character is not named Wilma, though she could be. Though her outfits might be similar. I mean, it doesn't get any better than a future purple spandex jumpsuit. My plan is to make it a series. I actually really like making a series. Something I've missed. I haven't been able to do this in ages. Like, I really enjoyed that with Classic Game Room, making like a series that people would tune into every day. That's not really relevant anymore. And I miss drawing comics way back in the day where I'd make a weekly comic. And I'd like to make this. If you look at the size of a modern comic book, whether 22 to 30 pages, I'd like to make a monthly or a bi-monthly series. But the pilot episode, the pilot book, the first book here should be a good bit larger than that because it needs to be played with the album. What's an album of 44 minutes? That's what you can put on vinyl. So there's a direct connection between the vinyl and the book, obviously. I'm also putting out The Art of Omega Ronin, which will have some story going back to where I started this plot concept in 2019 with this all-powerful being, but then it was well, what's the all-powerful being going to fight? I mean, it's what's it going to do? Well, people find it, and it helps battle the space pirates or whatever, and I kind of I had a couple different versions of the plot, and eventually I merged it with my old, I had this concept called Turbo Volcano, which started as a comic book also, which was going to be a hair metal band fighting for the future in the year 5000. So basically, it's going to be like a new wave band fighting for the future in the year 1982. So same thing. I mean, we all knew that Whitesnake was going to save the future, but you just didn't know how. So anyway, I'll be screaming about the launch here pretty soon. Getting dirty looks. And the history of Classic Game Room, hardcover, softcover, that should be out summer of 2024 to celebrate the show's 25th anniversary. And there might be one more show, of course. Maybe one more. I said it might be the final season. I wasn't joking. Oh, and also my return to documentary filmmaking. I'm producing a documentary about Omega Ronin and just the whole ridiculous journey that brand has gone through, starting as a comic book, turning into a electronic music band, and then turning back into a comic book with a companion electronic music band on vinyl, which is analog. So there you go. I could make a mediocre, angry show and hope to stir up controversy, or I could just write something original and be happy with it. So here we go. Omega Ronin, engage disco. Though Edit Station 1 is not in the book, you may see a familiar terminal that accesses the mainframes upon which Edit Station 1 is based. Like, I grew up around mainframe computers. I have this, like, love of mainframe computers and, like, spinning tape drives and, like, phone modems. Back when you would just take the phone and put them onto, like, those rubber thingies. Like, you old-timers know what I'm talking about, right? You, like, take the what's that thing called? The handset, and, like, you put it on the rubber thingies, and that would talk to... Because the mainframes were basically just cloud computing before cloud computing. And obviously, if you want to store, like, you know, some sort of alien language from a distant part of the universe, you're gonna want to store that on tape drives on the moon. I mean, that's just basic common sense. Anyway, keep an eye out for that. Hopefully, start seeing stuff in another week or two with the launch. And if that works out, if the framework works, hopefully wrap up Ethel the Cyborg Ninja issue number 3 and the hardcover collection, which has been stuck at like 80% forever, but like it's just taken that the way that I drew those books originally just took forever, and I'm a lot faster now. So hopefully can justify wrapping up the Ethel series and Magnum Skywolf as well. So we'll see how it goes. The documentary is going to be pretty cool. Actually, we got a whole bunch of stuff in development around here. So stay tuned. Maybe I should make an angry podcast about the Acolyte. Urgh! You know what makes Star Wars better? Cigarette smoke. Let that one sink in. You know I'm right. Oh, and if you're going to have all your figures hooking up with each other, cross species is like encouraged. I mean, Ugnaughts and Ewoks, that's how you get an Ugnaught. Just thought of that. I'm going to leave you with that one on your mind. Enjoy.